A plus A, Chapter 1 and 9. Framed. Ha ha ha! Theft is an evil, shameless act in the first place. What more when it actually involves the third imperial prince? Wehile could not hold himself back from laughing. At that time, even if the Academy had no intention of pursuing the matter further, due to the involvement of the imperial family, even Wu Songlin's reputation would be of no use. Anything related to the imperial family was never small, and Ling Han actually dared to steal an item belonging to the third imperial prince. That was a definite pathway to death. However, there should still be a reason, right? Otherwise, what would a thief steal this thing for? Wehile asked, his laughter very quickly stopping. Feng Luo snickered and said, "This is a token of the third imperial prince that he has only gifted to a rare few people. The holder of this token would be considered as a dear friend of the third imperial prince. It is not only a symbol of status and identity, it also means that all charges the holder incurred at any restaurant or inn in the imperial city would all be placed on the third imperial prince's tab." Ya! Wehile looked extremely envious. Although he was a genius of alchemy, he had not managed to obtain the third imperial prince's favor and wasn't gifted with such a priceless token. Now, actually seeing a profligate, spoiled young master holding on to one, how could he not be envious? Feng Luo smiled very proudly. This was given to him by Feng Yan, who had feared that his little brother would get into trouble in the imperial city. If Feng Luo possessed a token of the third imperial prince, then no matter who it was, they would have to give the third imperial prince some face. He patted Wei Hili's shoulder and said, "Young Master Wei, the task of framing Ling Han would be your job." "Me?" Wei Hili looked troubled at this. He only knew how to concoct alchemical pills, play around and show off, but framing someone was something he had never done before. Moreover, in the past, there were too many people who wanted to curry his favor, so no matter what job he wanted done, he only needed to say it and there would be someone willing to do that job for him. When had he ever needed to personally do anything? "What is it? Are you not willing?" Feng Luo smiled coldly. He pretended to put away the token. "Then just forget about it. I just wanted to help you vent your anger in the first place, but since you're unwilling to do it, then I will not force you either." "Wait," Wehele hurriedly called out, gritted his teeth, and said, "I'll do it." He was extremely embittered in his heart. He had offended Ling Han, but wasn't it all because he had stood up for Feng Luo? But now this guy actually said he wanted to help him vent his anger, and then he was really turning his back on him. Absolutely heartless. But after he had been abandoned by Wu Songlin, he was no longer the young master Wei of old, but only a mere yellow-grade, low-level alchemist. What right did he have to go against Feng Luo? Feng Luo had a genius of martial arts standing behind him that could vaguely be close to the level of absolute geniuses like the Third Imperial Prince and Kanye. Because of his brother, Feng Luo's own future prospects would be immeasurable. How was a down-and-out alchemist like him supposed to compare with that? Due to his current dire circumstances, Wei Hele could only bow his head in acquiescence. If he dared to refuse Feng Luo now, that would mean cutting off his only chance for a bright future. If he followed after Feng Luo, he could possibly leave Rain Country in the future, and thus get out of Wu Songlin's shadow. He accepted the violet-shaped badge and silently walked to Feng Luo's side. His hands were lowered at his sides, obviously placing his position at a lower level than the latter. Ha! Feng Luo laughed loudly, his face filled with pride. Even his brother had never thought that he would be able to take a slightly talented alchemist into his camp, had he? Let's see who dared to still say that he was a spoiled young master. Why don't you try taking in a yellow-grade alchemist to show your own ability? Wei Lei lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred and regret. But things have already advanced to this step. There was no way he would be able to return things to how they were before. After enjoying a meal with Ling Han, Qi John Tai naturally returned to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while Ling Han brought Hu Niu for another walk around the shops and bought some materials to set up the restrictions around his courtyard. He then returned to the academy. He was now not in much of a rush to take the second star pill. His priority now was to set up certain restrictions in the surrounding area of his courtyard. This was an early warning system. If anyone intruded into the courtyard, they would definitely disturb the restrictions in place, which would then release an alarm that only he could sense. Even if he was not in the room, there would still be clues left behind that would tell him that an intruder had broken into his courtyard. There was nothing to be done about it. He had very limited materials on hand, so he could only set up such simple restrictions. If it was in his last life, possibly not even powerful warriors of heaven tier would dare to barge through the restrictions he could set up. I'll just have to make use of whatever is available to me. I don't have any enemies now, anyways, he murmured. If Lu Yutong, Qi Yongye, and the others had heard his words, they would definitely jump out in objection. No enemies? He really dared to say that. Hu Bo was one, Feng Yan was another, He Chen could also be considered as one, and there was also Nanggongji. All these people were not easily trifled with, especially Hu Bo and Feng Yan. Hu Bo was a young master of the main line of the Hu clan, and Feng Yan was a genius of martial arts that had the potential to become a ruler. If these people were still not considered enemies, then who would Ling Han actually consider enemies? Unfortunately, they did not know that while Ling Han's current cultivation level was very weak, there was still the pride of a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his bones. How could he actually take these small rascals seriously? Furthermore, in his last life, he had the same kind of attitude, possessing a deep-set pride within him. He would never bow his head to anyone. The restriction was extremely simple, so Ling Han did not expend too much time on setting it up. After that, he swallowed a second star pill and began to strengthen his divine sense. From what Ling Han knew, there was no cultivation technique in this world that could strengthen divine sense. Only when the cultivation level rises would a martial artist's divine sense advance to the next level. This was a very passive process. For example, when he was still in heaven tier in his last life, his soul only needed to tremble slightly, and he could even directly erase the soul of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. But he had always suspected that since divine sense could be recovered through cultivation techniques and strengthened with the use of alchemical pills or divine medicine, then it should also be possible to cultivate divine sense through cultivation techniques. The only thing was that this kind of cultivation technique was not discovered yet. This was not impossible. After all, if it was not for the fact that he had come from 10,000 years in the past, how would he have known that there were so many pill formula that had been lost in the passage of time now? Obviously, there's a lot of good stuff that has been lost on the pages of history. Since it was like this in his current lifetime, then how could his last life be an exception to this theory? A very real example was seen from the very last period of his last life, when he had visited various ancient historical sites from which he had obtained a few ancient pill formula, which could all be considered to belong to the category of lost with time. Thus, perhaps many, many years ago, there may have been a cultivation technique that was meant to refine one's divine sense. As he pondered, he was still absorbing the medicinal effects of the second star pill. He suddenly felt very comfortable, for the soul was responsible for all the feelings and sensations of the body. Now that his divine sense was strengthened, he would of course feel an indescribable invigoration. One after another, very soon he had taken all 7 second star pills. My soul is almost twice as strong now. Ling Han's eyes snapped open. His eyes had become even deeper than before, as if they were twin bottomless pits, causing anyone who looked into his eyes unable to help but fall deeply into them. He smiled. This is a benefit of strengthening my divine sense. Using my divine sense to dominate over my opponent could be considered as my unique move. If my opponent has no defense against this kind of attack, then there is a high chance that I could kill him in an instant. The current strength of my soul should be equivalent to the cultivation level of Gushing Spring tier. His smile grew wider. This means that I would be able to absorb spiritual chi at the rate of a martial artist of Gushing Spring tier for my cultivation, and together with my immortal grade spirit base, hey, the rate of advance of my cultivation level would probably shock even me. I have to quickly reach Gushing Spring tier. Only when I have reached gushing spring tier will I be able to practice black grade cultivation techniques. That is the real beginning to the path of martial arts. Now I am filled with advanced, high level knowledge, yet have no ability to make use of what I have. This kind of feeling is really horrible. Eh? A rat has sneaked in.